I am wanting to pick up on support for children and young people with special educational needs and disabilities, SEND support. And need has risen, was reported back in January, has risen by nearly a third over the last decade. And the government has announced some reforms which are about moving from EHCPs to the new ISP, which are individual support plans. And I understand it's unclear whether those new ISPs are going to have very clear enforcement mechanisms, and also that councils generally welcomed the reforms, although disabled people's organisations have also been generally supportive, but the people are also worried about it potentially weakening children's and young people's right to support. So could you first start out by setting out your views on the government SEND reforms?
Yeah, I think I'm very glad the government's addressing this issue, because I don't think there's anyone that agrees that the current system is actually working either for schools, children or parents. It's an adversarial system, so I welcome the government's ambition in trying to make a more holistic system, and particularly the emphasis on early prevention and early identification. There's obviously been a recent consultation that closed, I think, at the end of May, so we'll wait to see what the final proposals are. I mean, so we welcome the government's ambition. We really want to make sure that the voices of teachers and parents and children are actually heard throughout this process. And I'm very glad that the Education Secretary took her time and actually held lots of meetings and workshops across the country with parents and carers. I think the success of it will depend on a number of things. There's no trust in the system at the moment. So I think a lot of this is about rebuilding that trust, so needing to take parents along with you whilst you're building the new system is going to be important. I'm glad that those children who currently have EHCPs, who are age 7 and under, will retain them up until the age of 16. So I think lots of those young people with the most complex needs will have that support continue. But I understand there will be concern about a new system and how that reflects. With the ISPs, what's going to be really important, because it will be a teacher school-led assessment process, co-designed with the parents, is that the investments put in to make sure that our schools have sufficient training and expertise. And that's going to be vital. I know education unions have also made that point. It's going to be important. I do welcome the fact that the system should hopefully not be as adversarial as it has been, but there will be a reconsider mechanism if parents aren't happy. I think the other thing is that alongside the ambition for more early identification and support, which then should hopefully not lead into formal diagnosis and greater need, that there does need to be more speech and language therapists and experts. Now, the government said they will do that and they will allocate funding to it, but I think we've just really got to see in the autumn, when we're expecting results of the consultation to come in and the final plans, to make sure that that actually happens. So funding is going to be really key to this as well.
Yeah. I mean, what parents have raised with me is the particular concern about disproportionate exclusions of black children with SEND, and also that that there's focus on mental health, neurodiversity, but some of the structural long-term issues relating to cost of living, inequality, just living in a divided political environment, has that is actually sort of adding to the issues. So your kind of parents are dealing with sort of a whole intersectional set of issues, as well as the special educational needs and disabilities of their children. And parents at the sharpest end of that don't have the energy and the capacity sometimes to keep advocating and keep pushing through the system to get their child or young person the support that they need. So is that something that you will be advocating on as all of this moves forward, to make sure that young people in London who are at the sharpest end of inequality are able to get the support that they need?
Yeah, that's always our aim. And of course, as part of the SEND proposals, at the heart of it is more inclusive schools. And I think, in a sense, the Violence Reduction Unit in London has been leading the way on that with its Inclusive Schools programme already. And obviously, one of the benefits of early identification of children with SEND, in particular that speech and language and communication difficulties, which made up the largest bulk of SEND children, is going to be really important. And the VIU have been piloting their Talk Matters programme, which does that in primary schools. So I think a lot of this is already happening, and children and people with SEND are our target one of our target groups with regards to a lot of the work we're doing around prevention, whether that's in the Violence Reduction Unit, whether it's in the Youth Lates programmes that you might ask me about.
We're coming to that to Youth Lates a bit later
so
in the meeting.
It is sort of hardwired, and that disadvantage is hardwired throughout. But you're right about the intersectionality, whether that's about disadvantage, so that this work we're doing on child poverty and income maximisation is really important too.
Okay, thank you. The other thing that parents have raised with me is the worry that by the sort of move to these individual, what are they called, ISPs, from the EHCP, they're worried that without a really strong programme of support and training for teaching assistants in schools, that potentially risks more young people ending up being excluded, which also takes us back to the work that you were talking about with the Violence Reduction Unit. So the and I think what this particular parent was raising with me was there's a concern about sort of in the short term the ISPs might be more affordable, but actually it ends up resulting in longer term costs. So are you confident that the risk of exclusion and exclusions kind of disproportionately affecting young Londoners from homes where they're living in poverty? Are you confident that exclusion, that moving to the ISPs won't lead to more exclusions?
Hopefully not. Obviously, I've talked a little earlier about the SEND proposals, and the intention obviously is that if children have that early intervention and the ISPs work, and they do require that workforce training, which includes whole school approaches to this, not just teachers, but support staff and teaching assistants, then issues can be identified early and, if you like, dealt with, so that actually you avoid more complex issues farther down the line. But obviously the Education Secretary and the bill actually makes it very clear that actually those with complex special educational needs will always have that extra support. So it's going to be a tiered approach. Support, a tiered
okay, and you'll be
approach.
You'll be watching in terms of...
We'll be watching, and obviously the work with the Violence Reduction Unit around inclusive schools is particularly built around reducing exclusions. And they've had great success in that as well.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.